Alright, so this is a video that was requested by a number of commenters. This is going to be a Dark Souls 3 PvP weapons tier list, ranking all the weapons for PvP in Dark Souls 3. I myself don't have much knowledge or playtime on Dark Souls 3 PvP, but I have someone here with me who does. Introducing my friend, Siri?
Hello?
Yes, not the Apple uh, AI, but an actual person. Alright, so let's start with the community tier list and just do a quick run through of this. So, what stands out to you in the top tier here? First of all, just take a brief look at it overall. Does that look
Uh-huh.
does that look like
This is okay, this is obviously after the DLCs and some of the patches.
okay?
Um because there are a number of weapons that should either be higher or lower depending on like what time frame you're looking at in the game.
Okay, we're going to be doing the most recent update. So, you would say you would change this, right? You would
If this was day 1, yeah, it'd be different. But there are a few things I think I would change
okay.
personally. And one of them is the fact that the war pick is not even in high tier. Listen, that weapon is completely bonkers.
Okay.
It
Warpix bonkers. Good to
it
know.
became bonkers the second that the poise rework was introduced.
Ah, they reworked Poise. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the Poise rework? Because I remember back at the beginning of Dark Souls 3 actually testing a little bit of that. There's a video on my channel about what I found, which
Mhm.
isn't much, but what did they change about it?
Essentially, poise was just a number that was in the game but had absolutely no relevancy whatsoever. Like,
Pretty
I'm
much
pretty
irrelevant,
sure
yes.
it did not even work.
It had
Um,
a single effect. In fact, there's a video on my channel that shows the effect of Poise, which is that if you had zero Poise, you would get no hyper armor frames on greatsword attacks, like the two-handed swords, not the ultra great swords, but the great swords themselves. But if you had even
mhm.
point 0.1 poise, then you would get some hyper armor frames with those attacks.
I see. So basically, it was a binary thing. It was either
Yeah,
on or it was off.
yeah, exactly.
So with the introduction of the poise rework, which I believe was the ring, it was no, it was the Ashes of Ariandel, I believe DLC, introduced the rework on poise, essentially allowing poise breakpoints to work as passive poise, unlike active poise from Dark Souls 1 or even Elden Ring. Um, but essentially, the heavier the armor you wore, certain weapons had a tier of poise that once you met that threshold, you could at least tank 1 to 2 hits, and it also decayed. It wasn't just you tank that hit and then you kept going, or you kept tanking it. It actually decayed.
Sort of
So
sort
the
of
first,
similar to Dark Souls 1, right? Like where you can tank one hit from a katana, but two puts you over the poise threshold.
yes,
Okay.
but it also did take a slight bit of like period of time of being not hit in order for that poise to generate back up to its full number.
So the
Uh,
the long the long and short of that there is heavier weapons stronger, lighter weapons a little bit weaker.
Yes,
Okay.
except for Warhammers. Warhammers had a stupid breakpoint of poise. You needed to be pretty heavy, like you needed to have multiple pieces of Havalon
Right.
in order to tank through them.
Okay.
However, the War Pick had one property that the other Warhammers did not have, and that was it did piercing.
Okay, so
So
so like you take
you
less or you take more damage regardless of the armor, or are we talking about poise piercing?
No, so it had you take damage from like just general damage in general. Like the Warhammer class did the same exact poise damage every single time.
Right, like
Uh
okay, okay. Sort of like thrusting swords, kind of. I mean
yes,
it's a
exactly.
little different, but yeah. Okay.
But what allowed the Warhammer to be better though was the fact that you would do an R1 and you could trade, but because you were trading in the middle of it because it did piercing damage, if you had the Leo
You get
ring, you could
counterattacks.
always
Yep.
get counter hitted.
Okay. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, the Leo ring. I mean, I'm assuming everybody knows this, but for those of you who don't know, the Leo ring in Dark Souls 1 was a 40% boost to what's called counterattack damage. If someone's in the middle of the active frames of their attack and they get hit by a well any attack, it deals counter damage, and then thrusting attacks specifically would benefit from a bonus from the Leo ring for a lot of damage, really.
Yes, and then the Warhammer class with the release of Ashes of Ariandel also received a buff in their move set, which allowed them to move forward, meaning that you could R1 and you had a devious amount of like roll catch ability now. And the fact that you could chase down people, so now with the passive poise, you can now R1 and bait them to come into you, and
Hmm.
then R1 late, and then you would tank it, you would counter hit, and you could hit somewhere up in like 1200, 800, depending on like armor and stuff like that. You could three shot someone.
Right, right.
Um,
Okay. So with weapons in Dark Souls 3, there are a few things I know about this. Basically, the weapons are going to be rated based on how much damage they do, how well they can catch rolls, because roll spam is strong in Dark Souls 3 if you don't have a way to deal with it. And then, like you mentioned, poise damage, counter hit ability, things like that. Some niche circumstances. Um, so I guess we can just move right into the tier list now.
mhm.
Let's start with what is this? This is the sword
I
that
think it's the
regens
Sora's straight
HP.
sword.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a Sora's straight sword. Listen,
it's not
the
good.
straight
Would be
sword.
my
Okay, hold
guess.
on. It's like mid tier. It's the straight sword
Oh, really?
like move set. Straight sword move set itself carries the straight sword
Okay,
category.
well, yeah, that's true. That's true. But let you in on a little secret. So pretty much every weapons tier list
Mhm,
I've made for a Souls game so far has put Astora Straight Sword pretty firmly in the low tiers because
mhm.
there's another factor that I kind of consider when determining these things, which is like, is it stronger than its contemporaries that do the same thing? So like, you've got the Astora Straight Sword and you've got the Long Sword, and there's almost never any reason whatsoever to use the Astora Straight Sword over the Long Sword, right? Does the
Except
Astora
for the
Straight
health
Sword?
regen.
Okay, see that
Except for the
that's
health
different. So in this game, there's
Yes.
actually something that sets it apart.
People like to. I don't know why they think health regen was not good. I mean, if you go back and watch a
It
lot of
was
Fight
strong.
Clubs,
I done been
it was,
knowing.
oh my god, the amount you had the heal,
Yeah,
you
because you
had the
stack
ring.
it. You can just
Yeah,
stack
you
it.
had the ring. You could pull out the Sora straight sword, and you could have the I forget what it's called. It's the adjudicator shield from
Yeah,
Souls.
the adjudicator
Uh,
shield. Just call it that.
you put it on your back, and you regen so much health,
Yeah.
that a lot of fight clubs would ban it or
Yep.
like just straight out just kill you if you had started doing that and
Yeah.
started to stall.
I actually
Um,
I remember that because the that's one of the things that it was either Dark Souls 2 or I mean maybe it was Demon Souls, but basically like a single health regen item does practically nothing, right?
yes.
But as soon as you start to stack them, like it
Mhm.
doesn't take very long at all for that health to add up, and there's a lot of downtime in Dark Souls fight clubs
In
where people
between
are just
fights, yes.
spacing, yeah, things like that. It's
So
ridiculous.
the adjudicator shield also had one really funny bug about it,
Hmm.
where I think it was like you got like 5 HP every like 2 seconds or something like that. It's not a lot. However, if you unequipped and re-equipped it, it would start that counter over and over and
Right.
over. So you would get five,
Right.
five, 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 five every single time you would spam it.
Yep. So I've actually seen that in if you've ever watched a Dark Souls 3 speed run, one of the things that they used to do, I don't know if it's still a meta strat now, but
Mm-hmm.
there was a spell that would leave you alive with like 1 HP,
Mm-hmm.
and then while they were running anywhere, they would just spam equip, de-equip, and re-equip the Astora Straight Sword, and it adds up quite a bit actually.
Yeah, it does in fact add up quite a bit.
Yeah.
So it's not actually the worst. I believe this also still had Square Up, which was the best weapon art at the
Yep.
time
Yep.
for long
Still
swords.
strong in Elden Ring, by the way.
Still strong, not nearly as strong though.
Yeah.
Does not track nearly as well as it did in Dark Souls 3. But the straight sword, like I said, carries a lot of weapons. But the fact that this weapon had health regen actually does help it a little bit.
Well, congratulations to the Astora Straight Sword. This is a monumentous occasion. It has finally worked its way out of the bottom tier. No longer compared directly to the Drake Sword. Good job. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh
Uh,
my God, what is this
do you
thing
know
is
what this
irrelevant.
is? Irrelevant? E for
It's irrelevant.
irrelevant.
Okay, the
Okay.
ballista. Okay, the ballista in Dark Souls
Is it
3 we
heavy
had explosive
crossbow?
bolts. I
Ballista?
believe, or I forget what
Are
it
crossbows
changes
actually
every time.
good? Are crossbows actually good?
It changes every single game, so I don't remember the name, but yes. We had explosive bolts
Are we talking mid tier
in
good or are we talking high tier good?
like straight sword crossbow was like a very common thing for like especially even the earlier like metas and stuff like that, simply because of free firing explosive bolts because they had the
Yeah,
range
you just
damage.
aim them down, and do they do a lot of
Yep.
poise damage where they knock people over?
Yes, they a
Okay,
lot
I
of
could see that
if I
being
remember
strong.
correctly, they actually true comboed into R to straight sword R1s.
That's
So
bullshit.
yeah, it was
Okay.
actually very. I would put it into at least mid tier. It was a
Yeah.
very strong thing until the shield meta became a thing.
Ooh,
It was very strong.
ooh. Shield meta, turtle meta. Lower it.
Yeah, maybe if this was like back before we knew how stupid the Lothric shield and the Black Knight shield were, yeah, it would probably be mid, but now it's
People
probably
didn't
low.
know how strong the Black Knight shield was. You guys are so cute.
Yeah,
You guys are so funny. I was using the Black Knight shield like day 2. Whatever. All right.
dude, I fought Spades SFC Spades RPG back way back when the game first came out, and me and him were both using either the Karthus Curve Sword or
Yep.
the Dark Knight Sword with the Black Knight Shield, and yep, it was not fun. I tell you what.
Lovely, lovely.
And
Very
this was
nice.
I think this was before they even buffed the dark
Thing.
element, so that you
Yeah.
couldn't. It was just impossible to get around it. So,
Alrighty.
um,
What the hell
oh
is
my
this?
god, what is this?
Is it
This is
candelabra? It's the candlestick thing?
oh the candlestick. This is irrelevant. It's E. Don't worry about it.
Okay, cool. I like it
Okay.
when things are just completely irrelevant, so I don't even have to like pretend to talk about them.
Yes.
Oh, you know what? This
Uh,
looks like the Astora Straight Sword too.
oh wait,
There's a
I think
dark
there's
one. There's a
two.
dark one and there's a light one. This has got to be the
Ye-
normal one. So
Yeah, I
what's
think the other
this?
one. I think that one scaled with. I think that was split damage. So
E tier.
yeah, it was not good.
Haha, the Astora Straight Sword maintains its position.
No. But the real one actually is good.
Yeah, the real one's decent. Okay, what is this?
I think this was the tree spear.
The
And
tree
like
spear.
90%. You got it was like you
Well,
killed.
it's a
Remember the
spear.
giant tree boss?
Yeah, I remember the tree boss, the big nutsack.
Yeah, yeah. This thing was I think okay. I think this is a mid tier weapon.
Okay.
This thing loosely like just was worse than the gargoyle flame spear. Like
Okay.
the gargoyle flame spear was the best spear for I don't God knows how long.
Yo, this is the candlestick.
So what is that?
That's a great question. It's like a long candlestick.
Uh,
It looks a
uh
lot like the candlestick to me. It's got to be irrelevant though, because you don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is. It has
Yeah,
to be irrelevant. Yes.
irrelevant. Okay, that's
Uh,
fine. I don't know what it is either, but suffice to say, if you see this, don't use it. What's
yeah.
this? It's a
I think this is the
claymore?
Lothric Knight Greatsword.
No, this is the
No, it's
claymore.
yeah. That's the bastard sword.
Bastard sword? Oh, right, right,
This is
right,
the
right,
no.
right, right. This
Yeah,
is the bastard sword. Right, 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 right.
yeah.
Of course,
This
of
is the
course.
Lothric Knight Greatsword.
Here's the claymore.
Whew. So if we're talking post poise, these things were pretty okay. They got significantly sped up with
We're talking
the Ashes of Arendelle.
strictly the most recent update.
Yeah, I know. So these things, they would have been like D tier, even maybe irrelevant. But now after the poise updates and after the buffs that they received, I would put them into mid to low,
Mid to low?
depending on yeah.
All right.
Uh, the Lothric Knight had a very decent moveset, if I remember correctly. It was slightly different. I think it had pokes instead. No, it had slams. So that's what
Pokes
it
are
was. It had
huge.
slams instead of so this Y-hander, a lot of the ultra
The rolling
light great
attacks?
swords. No, well, it did have that. It had the rolling R1, but the R2s on it were giant vertical slams, which you could use to roll catch people
Okay.
because they gave them a buff with their forward momentum.
I'm
So it
assuming
was
this
actually
is
pretty
the
decent.
best crossbow still.
Yep, I would still say this is the best thing. You put explosive bolts on it, you dual wield them, you aim at your feet,
Mid tier.
and it's mid tier.
Yeah,
Um,
okay. This is probably
so
irrelevant. Maybe D tier. Bandit's
there is
knife.
only one dagger that is relevant,
It's
and it's
only one dagger.
The Corvus Knight.
Okay. I
This is Kirk's sword.
still
This
bad.
is
Actually, maybe
it's still
not.
bad.
Still bad.
It's
D tier.
I mean it's got the straight sword moveset, but it's still
Yeah, it's
bad.
still bad.
Actually I think it has the broadsword moveset, so it's
Even
bad.
worse. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Bastard sword. This makes me sad, but I think it's actually low tier. Um,
Tragic.
it's just
Unfortunate.
there's so much better great swords, and as much as I love the Dark Souls 1 Claymore moveset,
Yep.
um, I have to give it. Pokes are better than just sideways thrusts or
Yep.
sideways swings.
It's just the way it
So
is. A lot of people disagree with that, but you're wrong. And if you're gonna go
yeah,
for the arcing sweeps, it needs to be fast. It needs to be really fast because
yeah,
otherwise you're just
and
so open.
yeah, and the bastard sword was not fast.
Yeah. Okay.
The axes did get a pretty decent buff. I think this is just the starting axe for
Yeah,
I
this
think
is
it was
the bandit.
warrior
Well, yeah,
bandit axe.
I call it the bandit axe.
This thing was probably it's not the worst, not the best. It's probably low tier,
Low tier. All
I'd
right.
say. Yeah. Now, which katana is this? There's no way to
It's
know.
impossible to
Is this
know.
the anime one? Is this the anime one? Because if
It's
it's the anime
mostly
one,
black with
it's
a black handle.
yeah. I think I'd forget the name of this one, but this is like mid tier. This is a great invasion weapon, but
Okay.
dueling it's worse. You know, as
Yeah.
katanas always are. They're flashy, but you just roll away from it forehead.
Yeah, there's no roll catch on a katana at all, really, is there? I mean, maybe
Nope,
maybe
unless
the
you
the Uchi R2 would have done something in Dark Souls 3, but unfortunately it's still kind of slow. So I
let me
don't
tell
know.
you, there's only one katana that's worth even using. It's the washing pole.
Oh
Um,
wow, that's a far cry from Dark Souls 1. Interesting.
yeah.
Bows are
So
irrelevant.
the bows are all the same. They're kind of irrelevant. I'm trying to think if there was one that was ever decent, and I can't think of one.
Okay.
Black Knight Halberd. Okay, this thing used to be nuts. Kind of fell out
Ooh.
after a while, so I put this thing in mid tier.
Okay.
This thing used to have an insane true combo. I think it was R1 into weapon art into R2 was a true combo, and it probably
Ah.
did about 1200, 1300 damage.
Yeah, that would one shot some builds. Okay. Black Knight Great Axe. Oh, looks like we've lost him. So I'll talk about Black Knight Great Axe for a moment. Is he disconnected? Oh, yeah. So, Black Knight Great Axe. The Black Knight Great Axe in Dark Souls 1 was a pretty decent weapon with a really unique moveset. Dark Souls 3, uh, probably pre-poise, it was a little less useful, but after the poise update, I'm guessing it's a little bit better. Probably no higher than mid tier, maybe even low tier. I'm gonna put it here and we'll see what he says about it.
Yeah, so sorry about that.
Don't worry
Yeah,
about
I
it.
think it's so
Is it
this
mid
is one of
tier?
those weapons.
Can it be mid tier?
This is D. I think this is D tier. This is one of the
Aw, so
weapons
sad.
where once you know the moveset, if you're not familiar with the moveset, this weapon seems unbeatable.
Okay.
If you know the moveset, this weapon sucks. This weapon is god awful. The only saving grace was the poise update.
Yep.
And the fact that it could fling you up in the air, gave
Ooh.
you a little bit of a little bit of downtime to figure out what you're gonna do. But this thing had the only way you ever lost this one is if you walked into their preemptive baiting R1s, and that was it. But
Nice.
other than that, it was and it only good two handed, so not one handed. Awful
Yep.
one handed.
Yep. What's
And
this?
this is the Black Knight Greatsword.
Oh, really? That looks very strange. Are all the Black Knight weapons except for the halberd down here? Maybe the sword is
Yep,
a little bit
that's the
better.
Black Knight sword.
Yeah.
Black Knight sword is actually worse
Yeah,
than the Greatsword because it's shorter.
exactly. Yeah, I was thinking that the range is really an issue because again we've talked about this, but Dark Souls 3 a lot of it is about roll catching and you catch someone's roll towards the end of their roll. So in order to catch someone's roll, you need to have a weapon with enough range that it can actually, reach them. And the Black Knight sword just doesn't have that. So
Yeah, agreed. So it's definitely just worse than one weapon that'll be coming up.
okay,
There's probably only like one or two good. Well, I shouldn't say there's one or two. There's probably about three or four good great swords, and they all have one thing in common: is that they can either roll catch or they have a lot of movement. So yeah,
solid.
this thing
So
irrelevant E tier.
okay,
It's the Black Knight
blacksmith
hammer.
hammer.
Yeah, Blacksmith hammer. Yeah, not good. Never will be, never was. You're coping if you ever thought it was good. It had the same moveset as the war pick, but just not the war pick.
What the hell is this? Some sort of curved sword?
It's one of the it's a katana, and
Oh, really?
I think it did poison. Um,
Wow.
it's not good. It's irrelevant to say the least. It was irrelevant.
All right.
Um, this thing was
Some kind of
worse than the
hatchet.
banded axe, so I'd say
Oof.
it's a D tier. It's either D tier or it's irrelevant. The banded axe was probably one of the longest axes. Although there is one more that is coming up that is strictly better than the bandit axe, and when we get there, we'll talk about it.
Oh, we got a lot of weapons here. Okay.
Yeah. All
These
right, so
guys.
these weapons, not as bad as you would think. These things had
Yeah,
the
I've
quick
seen these a
step,
lot.
and they had very, very fast L1s. These
Yeah.
things were deceptively good at evading people, and it was kind of annoying, but I would still just put them in low tier. They
Okay.
weren't all that good.
Now, one thing to keep in mind for anybody who's watching this who hasn't played Dark Souls 3, the weapon arts are equivalent basically to Ashes of War in Elden Ring, and also you can't change them in Dark Souls 3. So if you want to use Quickstep, you have to have a weapon that has Quickstep on it.
Yes, they are just static things, and many of the weapons do not have unique ones. They share one across an entire class.
Yeah, and some of the weapons that have unique ones would really prefer to not have that, but that's okay.
Yeah.
This
The
is the broadsword.
Yeah, this goes directly into irrelevant. It is just worse than the long swords, and it has a worse move set in general, and it just is shorter.
Yeah,
That's all there is to it.
all the bad things, all the things you don't want. This is obviously
This is
irrelevant.
the greatest weapon of all time.
Oh
The
yeah, high
greatest
tier. My
weapon of
bad.
all time. Yeah,
Top
yeah,
tier.
top tier. Yeah, no, it goes irrelevant.
Yeah.
Okay, this thing.
Butcher's knife. It's ugly
The butcher's
compared to the Dark
knife.
Souls 1. Butcher's knife has a bunch
Yeah.
of.
This was classified as a great axe, I believe.
Okay.
Um, but I believe it did have its own unique moveset, and the moveset was actually pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
But how it did share the great or like the axe and great axe poise system, so it did have a decent amount of poise break to it. But I would still just put it at low tier. It's not that great, but it could, still decent.
Okay, is the
Cestus,
Cestus
okay.
irrelevant?
Is Cestus? That's the thing. One thing I don't remember is if the combo Cestuses was at the end of Dark Souls or if it was in the biddy, like towards the middle. I
I'm
think it was towards the
pretty
middle.
sure it was towards the middle. Yeah, because I actually remember
Combo
people running
Cestus
it.
was top tier for like a whole patch.
But then
For
poise.
But then poise happened, and I believe they also took away its true combo. It had a ridiculously long true
Bye
combo. It was
bye.
like R1 into L1 into R1 into R2 into L1. It was stupid, but now it's irrelevant. So
Bye
who cares?
bye. All right. This is some
And
kind of talisman or casting
yeah, that's just
thing.
talismans. I mean, you use them. You just use the one that has the highest face scaling. Duh.
Right.
So
So one of them's strong and the rest of them are terrible.
I just don't remember which one it is. Yeah.
Okay, well that's
I think
fine. We don't need to worry about that. Incantations. I mean, spellcasting in general in Dark Souls 3 was actually pretty garbage. So you really don't need to worry too much about these because you shouldn't be casting
yeah.
spells. This thing is a two-handed curved sword. If I remember correctly, with
Yes,
a
I'm
decent
trying
move
to remember
speed,
which one.
move set, but kind of slow.
I'm trying to remember which one this was called. Who? I think this one was pretty decent. Also the moveset of curved greatswords also did carry a lot of weapons. They had great running R1s.
Yep.
That were very, very easy to roll catch with.
Two-handed R1, not
So
bad.
yeah, two-handed R1 also not bad. Did a lot of poise damage. Pretty decent. So I would say anything, like most of them are low tier. There's only one I would put anything lower than low tier, but I think there is one that is really good. I just don't remember which one it is.
I'm sure you recognize this one.
Old faithful.
Even I recognize this one. Yeah.
Karthus Curve Sword. This was the best weapon up until Ashes of Ariandel.
Oh.
However, it got nerfed. They nerfed the Phantom. So essentially, a lot of the weapons in Dark Souls have what's called Phantom Range.
Yep.
Where their hitboxes extend past their actual physical weapon model.
Due to latency,
And
generally speaking, but also some of them
latency,
actually
but
do
also
have
just
disjointed
wacky hitboxes. Yeah, some wacky hitboxes. Dark Souls 2 has suffered a lot from that. But Dark Souls, the Karthus Curse Sword had a good like foot extra on its end of the weapon model.
Fucking stupid, to be honest. So dumb.
It caught anything. This was the quintessential, like, you learned to roll catch or you just were not playing. You were not dueling in Dark Souls 3. This thing was the best weapon up until Ashes of Ariandel, and then it fell off.
How hard? I mean, it's still high tier?
Still good.
Okay.
It's still high tier, but there's one longer weapon.
Ooh. A contender for its spot. I see. Okay, we do actually have a ton of weapons to get through here, so if something's irrelevant, just irrelevant, instant. There it goes. Okay.
This thing is irrelevant.
All right, perfect.
Irrelevant. This thing, I hate to do it, but this had the worst greatsword moveset. It's irrelevant.
Irrelevant.
It was upward and downward swings. It wasn't vertical. It wasn't horizontal in any way. So
Unfortunate.
yeah, I think this is the washing pole. This is top tier.
Okay.
Top tier. The washing pole has a ridiculous, just ridiculous range, and there was one way. So there was, I forget what it's. I think it's colloquially called the ravioli step.
Yep, I know what you're talking
Yep,
about.
where if you backstep or even just like do an input, swap your input on the middle of a of a backstep, you can actually go backwards or what is technically forward,
Yeah.
and then you press your R1, you get the running R1, and it is deceptively long range. You can catch someone like halfway and across into the arena just because of how long it is. But there's one specific uh, thing that you can do with the washing pole that just made it top tier, and that was just the running R1.
Yep.
So in a lot of Souls games, if you do it incorrectly, if you do a running R1 and then change directions, you will get like this weird misstep where your character has to like stop themselves and change directions. However, you can alleviate this by just holding block. And so you can literally
Yep.
just walk around in a giant circle, go as fast as you want, holding running R1. And the thing is holding block while you were doing that actually buffered the input. So you could run at someone, sprint at them, pause, like holding the block, and you had probably a good second there to just hold to wait for them to roll. And as soon as you did, you pressed R1 and it queued the running R1. It was incredibly good at roll catching, and that was the only thing it did. It also had a decent amount of range for its R1s. But this thing was just the roll catcher other than the Karthus Curse Sword. It was annoying.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so real quick about the ravioli step. The inputs for ravioli step is just you have your character in a neutral position. You press circle or B or whatever your backstep button is, and then there's a brief period of time after you input that and before your character actually backsteps that you can change direction. So you change the direction your character's facing, and then the backstep happens opposite to the direction your character is now facing. So you can backstep forwards effectively.
Yes, and
Yeah.
that will also cue a lot of the weapons running R1s,
Yeah.
which the watching pole had a very good one.
So bonus
Essentially,
range.
you just got bonus range out of it. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, some people got a little too overzealous.
Yeah, they get backstabbed.
In your
Yeah.
face, and you just whack them two or three times. And
Oh,
then
right.
Did it again.
Backstabs are terrible in Dark Souls 3. I forgot about that. Not as bad as they are in Elden Ring, though. Oh, man, is there a mess in Elden Ring. Whatever. Okay.
All right, claws irrelevant. There's only one set of claws that are decent.
Okay.
Claymore. I would say this is a mid tier. There's only one good greatsword moveset, and unfortunately, that does not belong to the Claymore.
Oof. Club, probably
Club,
decent. Post poise.
Post
Irrelevant.
poise. It's
post
The
poise.
thing is it's just
Still the club.
It's still the club. Bow irrelevant. And the Karthus dagger.
This is the good dagger.
This is the only good dagger. It's not top tier,
Okay.
but I would say it's mid to high. So the thing
Boo.
is, this thing was it was deceptively long, like as long as the Lothric straight sword.
Wow.
In phantom range. However, it had this stupid rolling R1 that put its weapon box and its hitbox so far in front of your character that it felt like it was a straight sword. And it was the most annoying thing to deal with, especially with how broken rolls were in Dark Souls 3.
Yep.
And it was hard to like just sit there and watch them roll and roll and roll into you. Eventually you realize that you could just, once they rolled into you, just R1'd. But if they were very good at it, they could just roll around and then just hit you.
And I mean, with the bonus range, they can kind of space it too. So.
And I believe it did piercing damage with that. So if you hit it with a Leo ring,
Wow.
It could hit pretty hard. It also was very fast. It's a caster. This thing's irrelevant. Crescent Axe irrelevant.
Yep. Crescent Axe maintains its position as an irrelevant weapon.
This thing is irrelevant. It was never good. Okay, this rapier had some potential in invasions, and it was not the worst in duels.
Really?
This thing was probably low tier.
Okay.
It had a giant step back. It was essentially a move that allowed people to put some distance in between people, and it threw out a dagger. So if you had someone that was using the tier in their I forget what it was called.
Tears of Denial, I believe, is
Tears
what
of
you're
Denial,
referring to.
Yeah, Tears of Denial.
That's the one that stops you
throw
from
this out.
dying the first time you would
at 1
die.
HP.
Yeah.
Put you at 1 HP. It stops you from dying once.
Yeah,
And
but
if you
this will
threw
help.
this out,
Yeah.
yeah, if you threw this out, you could pop their denials and sometimes kill them. So it wasn't bad.
Yep.
All right, these are the only good claws, and they're no higher than D.
Haha. Wow. Sorry, claws. Fist weapons have a history of just like either they have broken combos or they
They're
don't.
either nuts or they are irrelevant.
Yeah.
There's no in between.
What in the world is this?
I think this is that one glaive that like is just a giant skeleton. This thing was irrelevant.
Irrelevant. This is a caster item. Irrelevant.
Yeah. This thing also
This
irrelevant.
is a
It's just
casting rapier. Kind of an interesting
yeah.
concept, but still irrelevant. This is
Yeah.
irrelevant.
Irrelevant. The dancer swords, not the worst weapons.
Pretty low
Very predictable
damage
though.
output though, right?
But
Like
yeah, very low damage. These things are D tier. They're not irrelevant, but they're not great.
okay. This is
I'm
a moonlight
looking.
katana or something. I don't even know what I'm looking at
Oh,
here.
is this that katana? Is that there's so many katanas in this game. Dark Souls 3 just had a hard on for katanas.
Yeah.
Which one is this?
I
Oh,
don't know. It's moonlight katana. That's what I see. There's a bow. There's a bow.
yeah,
There's a bow.
bow. Yep.
Just trying to get some of these out of the way.
I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure. Like there's two katanas in this game that are like really worth looking like other than the washing pole. This thing is
Most katanas are
low
not
tier.
terrible. Okay.
Yeah, low tier. It's not great. It's not bad.
Okay.
Dark hand, very funny meme weapon. Nothing but that. Okay,
Yeah.
this thing, depending on where you were in the game, was the best weapon, or I think it became just low tier.
Depending on where you were, huh?
Yeah, I believe towards the end of the
Oh,
lifespan
okay.
um of Dark Souls 3, this thing had gotten nerfed, and the introduction of poise made straight swords a little bit less
Still
a
strong.
little bit less,
Still strong, but
little bit
less
less
strong.
But yeah, but this thing has received multiple nerfs, I believe. It had went from like an S or an A in scaling, I think, down to a B, and it had its base damage reduced.
Yeah,
So I think
that's
it's
probably
mid-tier.
below mid tier, but we'll give it mid tier as an honorable mention. I don't even know what this
Okay,
is, but probably a fist weapon.
these are the dragon fist weapons. They're not bad actually. They're like D tier. They're not
Really?
irrelevant. They're
Okay.
not irrelevant. I think these are some of the last fist weapons that had true combos.
What the heck is this? Giant axe?
This is yeah, it's irrelevant. Don't worry.
Okay. This thing.
This thing, yeah, this thing was I think it was a pyromancer weapon that allowed you to cast while having the
The
weapon
weapon
out.
out. Yeah. Okay.
This thing wasn't actually bad because pyromancies in Dark Souls 3 were insane.
Unlike pretty much every class of magic.
Yeah. So this thing is, I believe, mid tier.
Okay.
This thing was not
It's also a
the
curved
worst
sword,
thing. It's
which
also
kind
a
of
curved sword and nerf set. Yeah.
yeah,
And I
kind of
think
gives
that's
it an honorable mention because curved swords in Dark Souls 3 are just at least they were on another level. I mean, they're a little bit, poise, whatnot, blah blah blah, but still strong.
Yeah. Okay, next weapon. This thing is irrelevant. This thing was only good in invasions or even funny meme duels.
Yeah, I see. I used to see this a lot early on, but it's gone now. This too actually was pretty common.
This thing, this is I think the best axe.
Mid
This
tier.
had the longest range. This thing is I think mid tier if I remember correctly. If I'm remembering correctly. My boy Ornstein spear.
Sorry.
This thing was not bad. It's
Okay.
actually not bad.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
This thing is D tier.
Okay.
It is simply outclassed by a few spears of its own.
I remember this one. I've seen this one a lot. This was like a
Yeah, this
hybrid
thing.
spear halberd.
Halberd. Yes,
Yeah.
this thing is mid to high. This thing was
Seen it a
very good.
lot. A lot.
It was
Very
very
common
good.
weapon.
It
Freaking
had a very
everywhere,
high-
actually.
It had the halberd poise breakpoint, but it had a far better moveset. That was before they nerfed halberds, though. To be fair.
This is the Dragon Tooth.
Do we even need that? This is irrelevant.
Yeah, it's irrelevant. Some kind of straight sword.
I think this is the Lothric straight. Is this the Lothric straight sword?
You're asking the wrong guy.
I know. Some of them have very similar silhouettes. I believe this. I'm going off of the assumption of the Lothric straight sword. This thing is S tier.
Oh,
It's top tier.
really?
This
Even
no,
to this
no,
day.
no. This is not Lothric straight sword.
Okay.
I remember the silhouette of it now. I don't remember quite what is this weapon. I think this is.
Uh,
Oh wait. I think this is a great sword.
no, is it?
It might actually be
Is
an.
it the? It's the really skinny one.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
don't think this was anything better than low tier though. I remember seeing it a little bit, but it wasn't that great.
Okay. The
These things are
Tonitrus
memes. These things are memes. They were good. They worked in some
Gargoyle
duels.
Spear.
Yeah, gargoyle. This is not the gargoyle spear. These are the
What?
dual spears.
Ah, okay.
This is the dual spears. These things weren't bad. These things are like D tier. They're not the worst. They're definitely better than irrelevant. But the next thing, irrelevant.
Super relevant.
Irrelevant.
This is the
S
S
stock,
stock.
the best stock.
Yeah, the S stock used to
Except the
be
fall
super
from
strong,
Karthus.
and
It
then
used to be.
yeah.
Yeah, it had its phantom range. It had phantom range like almost a foot and a half to 2 feet behind, or like 2 feet in front of its actual hitbox. And it had ridiculous speed, especially in the offhand. It had for some reason when you offhanded it, it actually had a faster R1, and it comboed with a very infamous weapon combo with the Yorm spear main hand
Mhm.
and the offhand S stock.
Yeah, so
However,
a couple of
oh,
things
go ahead,
about
go ahead.
turtles in Dark Souls 3 real quick is that the they nerf turtles heavily moving from Dark Souls 1 to Dark Souls 3. I mean, I don't know about Dark Souls 2 because I never used a shield in Dark Souls 2 unless I had to. But the S stock, when you poke from behind a shield in Dark Souls 3 and someone hits your shield while you're poking, you still take chip damage. And depending on the size of their weapon and like the damage output of it, you would sometimes lose that trade. It's pretty rare, almost never actually, but
Yeah.
it also
But
destroyed your stamina, which is just a bad
it
place to be.
did after the nerf. Before the nerf, though, the Black Knight shield and the turtle poking, you basically lost nothing
Yeah,
from trading with the
there's a
sword.
video on my channel again about specifically the S stock and risk versus reward, and then they nerfed it. I didn't think it needed to be nerfed, but whatever.
I think it definitely needed either.
I'm
Maybe
gonna formally
it
disagree
itself
with
did
that
not need
one.
to be nerfed, but maybe the Black Knight shield maybe did. I think I agree with if it was the Black Knight shield that got nerfed. But yes, this thing now is like low tier. It's definitely
Really?
fallen from grace. I
Aw.
think so.
All right, tragic,
There is
but
just a better poke weapon in the gargoyle flame spear. So,
alrighty. The heck is
the
this?
executioner's great sword, irrelevant. It's just not good.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Peeve Peverson. It's just
Oh, dude,
not that good.
what's with his builds, man? I mean, I don't want
They're
to harp
meme
on this
builds,
for
and
too long.
they're kind
Yeah,
of like um they're kind of
fun invasion
just like
builds.
fun invasion build theme builds.
Okay.
Peverson, if you ever see this, can you unban me, please?
I don't think he's gonna do that.
Yeah. Okay, now
This
here's
thing I've seen a lot.
the only curved greatsword worth listening to or like worth using. This thing is actually like mid to high tier. This thing just had a lot of range.
Cool.
Just a lot of stupid range. And it just the curved greatswords hit like trucks. I don't know what else to say. It was very good.
Yep.
Falchion, strictly worse than the Karthus and other
Ah,
options. It's
get
low tier. It's
wrecked.
not the worst. It's just not anything else.
So this is a little bit of poetic justice for the Falchion because if you have watched my Dark Souls 1 PvP weapons tier list, you know that the reason that the scimitar is basically dog shit tier is that I mean actually I think I put it in C tier, but basically the scimitar is just a falchion but worse. And in this game, that happened to the falchion. The falchion is just the Karthus curve sword but worse,
But
and
worse.
I think that's hilarious. But
I'm
anyway,
sorry, Elba Bobo. It's not that great.
tragic really.
The meme swords, the
Yeah,
dishwasher swords.
this is a
This is a
take
relic.
on this was
These
really
things
popular early on. I
before
yeah.
people learned that you could parry anything in this thing's moveset and you instantly died the moment
Yeah.
you got parried.
It was also so obviously bad for so long. I mean, I'm surprised so many people
Yeah.
used it. It's like a revamped what's the Artorias Greatsword, right?
Yeah, it's
Uh,
just strictly worse.
yeah, but it has a built-in offhand dagger, and it has like some other weird things going on, and the special attacks that were the reason that people really liked it were just terrible. I mean, even if
They
you
were just
weren't
bad.
parrying them though, they were just free. Like it
Yeah,
should never
they
hit
just
you.
it did not do a lot of it didn't do a lot of chip damage to shields either. So you literally just sat there and blocked it, and it didn't matter.
Or you could roll through it. I mean, it should never
or you
hit
can
you.
roll through it, or you parry it. So
Yeah.
it was just a meme.
It should never hit you. What's this?
Cinder's
Coiled
Greatsword.
sword.
Yeah, the coiled sword or whatever it was called.
Okay.
The guy, the Cinders, the final boss. That
Yes.
you get the great sword from it. You know, this thing is irrelevant. I mean, it has a funny weapon art,
Tragic.
but it's just not worth.
Flamberge.
Now I've got to think. Um, which moveset was Dark Souls 3 for the Flamberge?
Excellent question.
This makes this weapon either A, irrelevant, or B, actually like mid tier, depending on the moveset. I believe it had the better moveset with the one where you had like the Hollow Knight Greatsword, where you did not do like up and down or anything like that. You actually like swung it in like a circle pattern. I believe it had that, and I think that makes it mid tier. If
I'm gonna
I
put
will
it in mid tier
I will
because
take the L
I want
if
that to be
it's
true.
actually just the normal. If it's just the normal greatsword, but it depends. Like I said, all the greatswords depend on which moveset it has. There's only one good one,
Righto.
other than the Claymore's Reach.
Rock on a stick.
Irrelevant.
Cool.
Ah,
I've seen this before.
new old, or the old,
The old new faithful or the new old faithful?
old new faithful. Yeah. Before people figured out there was another one. So this thing shoots straight up into high tier. This thing has actually a good L2. Once for like so rare in a lot of Dark Souls 3 PvP was your weapon art's actually doing anything other than straight swords.
Yeah.
But essentially, this thing had the same reach because of after the nerf of the Karthus Curve Sword. It had the same reach as the Karthus Curve Sword. It just had better damage. So it was just strictly better, and it had a decent L2.
Okay. This has got to
Okay,
be the Gargoyle
do
Flame
we
Sphere?
even need
No,
to
this is
say?
a
Do we
torch.
even
Just
say?
kidding.
Yeah. Do we need to say anything? This
I'm
thing is
0
also
for 2
relevant.
on guesses as to what the
Yeah.
Gargoyle Flame Spear looks like, by the way.
It's also irrelevant. What
This is
is
not
this?
irrelevant. I've seen this actually. This is on the. This is near the top tiers right here, on
Oh,
the
good. Is this the
community tier
katana?
list. Is this the meme, the anime katana?
This might be the anime katana. If so, this
Okay.
is mid tier.
Super edgy.
Yeah,
Okay.
this thing is super edgy, but it's good for invasions. It's okay for duels. Frida's Scythe. Uh,
D tier.
it's like lower D tier. They had a flashy L1, but there was just one scythe that was the king of it all.
Everybody's seen this weapon. If you've played Dark
Yeah,
Souls 3
I'm sorry.
PvP,
My
someone uses
boy
this.
Obobobo. Yeah, this thing is irrelevant. Okay. Gale Sword. This thing's actually pretty decent. And you
Okay.
might be asking, but well, it has the normal moveset of a great sword, and you'd be right. Except for the fact that you are actual Sonic and like an actual god every time you use this weapon, because the weapon art pushed you like 700 feet or like 7 miles in one direction, and you would use it to chase people.
Okay.
So this thing was at least mid to high tier. If this was invasions, this thing would be top tier, but for duels, this is like mid tier,
Yeah.
top mid tier. So
All right.
it's not the worst.
Is this
This
the
is
Gargoyle
relevant.
Flame Spear? 0 for 3. Is
1
this
for
the
3.
Gargoyle Flame Spear?
Yes.
Woo!
Easy top tier.
1 for 4.
There's nothing that needs to be said. This thing was so long, and it actually had a decent like weapon art on top of it, and you got to poke from behind the Black Knight shield or the Lost Lady shield, which is also a good thing.
Yep.
But I believe also offhand it was also faster, like the S stock. For some reason, the thrusting weapons in this game were faster than the offhand. So once again, you use a bigger, heavier, one-handed like great axe with the Gargoyle Flame Spear in the offhand. It was very
Best of
very
both
hard
worlds.
to get in. It was very hard to get into you, and a lot of it true comboed. So you did a lot of damage as soon as you hit someone, and this thing was just stupid long. So yeah, this thing was nuts.
What the hell
This
is
thing's
it?
irrelevant.
Okay. It's the site. Yeah.
It's just irrelevant.
Casting thing maybe, or what is this?
Yeah.
Is this Spiked Club? Okay.
Mhm.
I've seen these a lot.
Okay.
I remember these quite a bit actually.
Okay, but here I got into a heated argument with Fighting Cowboy about these weapons. If anyone knows who that is, these things are not good. They are only good if your parent does like your opponent does not know how to parry.
Okay.
There's only one saving grace on it, or like there's like 1.5. The L1s did have a decent amount of range, but the rolling L1 is what everyone used on these.
Yeah, that's the double
If you
stab, right?
Yeah, it's just the double stab. You just parry it forehead, and you lose. So it's
Yeah.
like
So I actually remember this weapon vaguely, which is that it had it. You're swinging with two swords, and
Mhm.
the time in between the swings is really fast, but the startup was
Yep.
actually kind of slow, and that was
Yes.
what I remember. I was looking at them and I was like, these are actually terrible, but that's just me. That's my opinion. So who
Yeah.
knows?
So, yeah, these things are like in like duels. They're like low tier. They're not the worst. Could be better. They're kind of good when they're buffed with Darkmoon Greatsword or Darkmoon Blade or like Crystal Weapon. But
The weapon buffs in Dark Souls 3, if I remember correctly, lasted like 30 seconds though. So you're not gonna, they're really short
yeah,
compared to Dark Souls
you
1.
had
Dark Souls
to.
1, you're getting like 90 seconds plus. But Dark Souls 3 was really easy to wait them out, and they did less damage, if I remember correctly. So
Yep.
just hard nerfed.
All right. Only one great axe worth mentioning. This thing is irrelevant. Great
Large
Club,
club, great club.
large fall from grace from Dark Souls 1.
Yeah.
This thing's irrelevant. And the only good scythe, this thing goes in like top of mid tier. This thing is actually pretty decent. So it had the longest range out of all the scythes. And as you know, the scythes go behind shields. But most importantly, they got a buff to I think their moveset speeds, so that they were able to like combo into R1 R2s, which
Hmm.
was very nice. They did a lot of damage. It did bleed, because it was a Corvus weapon, and it just was a solid weapon all around. And you could not parry two-handed sights on top of it.
Yeah, that's a thing that was introduced, I think, initially in Dark Souls 3, is that very large
Yep.
weapons can no longer be parried. Um,
Yep.
yeah, so that's something to consider with certain weapons. Like this one, it can't be parried. It's still garbage though. But yeah.
It's still dog. Yeah, there's just no saving it. This was the lance. Funny enough, this thing was not the worst thing in the world. This thing was actually probably like low tier. This thing had a deceptively long range, and if you like, oh man, if it was it had like a really nice R2, and if that R2 connected, it did like 800 damage. So
Lances in
it was
Elden
not
Ring
the worst.
significantly better, but
Yeah. Uh,
mace.
which one is this?
It's a mace. It looks like a
There's a
mace.
couple of them that are decent. But that one is, I think, irrelevant.
I've seen this a lot.
Budget Yorm's Great Hammer. This thing's actually like top mid. There's only one reason to ever use this weapon, and it's if you're doing the offhand poke, one-handed, and then like main hand great
Yeah.
axe.
Okay.
However, there's just a strictly better weapon in Yorm's great axe. So, but it's not bad.
Unfortunate. Scythe
Yeah,
irrelevant.
Scythe irrelevant. There's only one good one.
This one's
It's this
irrelevant.
one. Also irrelevant. Awful moveset. This thing had the Dark Moon blade as its like buff. Still garbage though. It still wasn't good.
Boo.
Also bad. This thing's also bad. Udex Gundyr. No, 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 no. This
Wait.
thing is not bad. This
Okay.
thing is like top mid. There is a very, very, very famous Japanese player. I'm sorry for forgetting his name. It's been, several years. But he made this weapon so good. The mind games you could play with it between you either doing running R1s or if you're going to do the weapon art. This thing actually had a deceptive amount of range too, and it did a lot of damage. However, there is one saving grace that I think that stops it from like being put up higher. And it's the fact that you can parry it. Um, at least the weapon art. You can't parry the two-handed weapon, but you can parry the weapon art, which is okay. But like, yeah, it would be higher if you couldn't. But
Halberd strong.
and if this is not the red halberd, which is
Oh.
strictly better, so it's irrelevant. Irrelevant, shorter, irrelevant. Uh,
Very short, actually. The shortest curse sword,
yeah,
I think. Irrelevant.
yeah, it's irrelevant. Irrelevant. This thing is worse than the arbalist. Nope,
Casting thing.
nope.
I don't even know what this is.
My baby.
I've seen
Top
this
tier.
one. This one has a really
Top tier.
interesting moveset. So this has it's similar to the Flamberge. Well, no, 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 no.
Mm-mm.
I'm trying to
This is the
remember.
Hollow Knight sword.
Yeah.
So this thing had
What a
a
moveset, dude.
what a moveset. I know the moveset on this thing skyrockets this weapon up the top tier because the moveset of the great swords, while not being great, they have a great poise like break point. They're just held back by their slow R1s. This thing did not have that problem, and it
Yep.
just traded like no one's business. This thing would trade with anything. And the fact that it was incredibly light made it so you could also use it almost in full Havels. And this thing was just a menace. This thing is top tier. This is the best greatsword in the entire game. There was just nothing else, hands down. And I think this also had square off, the same as the long swords, which also
One of the
have
few relevant
weapon
arts, yeah. Okay.
No, that's irrelevant. Irrelevant. This thing's also irrelevant. This thing,
I've seen this before.
love it to be.
It's irrelevant.
It's D tier. It's a
D tier, huh?
D tier. It's one of the longest. It's like as long as the Lothric Knight's straight sword, but it doesn't do as much damage, and it does frost. And frost in this game sucked. Irrelevant.
I can do some of these.
Yeah, this is meme.
Bop bop bop. This
Long
is
sword,
comparatively
this is the
irrelevant,
long
but we can
sword.
put it
This
on
is
like low
low
tier.
tier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Comparatively irrelevant, but you know, it's still strong. What the heck is this? I've seen this before actually.
I've seen it as well. It's just I don't quite remember.
I mean,
I think it's irrelevant though.
yeah, if it's not memorable, it's probably irrelevant. This is another one I've seen quite a bit, but also probably
Lothric
irrelevant.
Knight Great Sword. This thing was not bad, but it was not good. This thing is like D tier at most. It had very good, I think, scaling with some of the elemental stuff, and that's why a lot of people used it. Spear, shorter than the it's irrelevant. It's not the Gorgo Flame Spear. Old Faithful.
Oh boy.
Top tier. This is top tier. This is the best straight sword in the entire game. The longest range. Just a great moveset. Really far hitbox.
If I had kept playing Dark Souls 3, this is probably what I would have used.
This thing stayed relevant the entire time. So like this thing is just good. It was just also a very high skill weapon after the poise patch.
Not if you have it. Not if you have a Black Knight shield, though. But you know,
if you were a Chad and didn't use the Black Knight Great Shield and use like parrying dagger or anything like that, you had to have good spacing. So
you're still cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is.
I wish it was higher. It's F tier. It's E tier. This thing's awful. Lucerne.
Lucerne.
Lucerne's actually not bad.
I figured as much.
Because it's like low tier. The thing that saves this is the fact that for some godforsaken reason it does piercing damage, and therefore you could use it with the Leo ring. And the fact that it has halberd poise means you can trade pretty easily with it.
The mace.
The mace strictly worse than the war pick. So irrelevant.
Yeah. Mailbreaker. I think that's a.
I think that's actually the pairing.
Nah, this is the mailbreaker.
Irrelevant anyway.
Hunted P. That's the mailbreaker. What the heck is this?
But, okay. Now that I'm remembering, though, there is one dagger, and I think we might have to go back and look through it. There is one dagger when you infused it with dark, it just did 1,000,000 damage, and I don't remember which one it was.
Bandit's knife? No.
It might have actually been the bandit's knife.
D tier.
Just preemptively in like low tier because the only reason you ever used this was the repost.
Yeah.
Had a stupid amount of high damage. You did dark because dark after it got buffed did also a stupid amount of base damage. And when you were posted with it, you almost one-shot people with it. So the only reason you use it.
Irrelevant.
Irrelevant. Shotel, like, it's not bad. It's like D tier. I mean, the thing is,
you could put it low tier.
Prior to the dark buff, this was the way you got around shields. Was not the greatest way. Once dark got buffed, that was the only way you ever got around shields, and Shotel became irrelevant. So it's like D tier.
We'll put it in D tier. Yeah, I mean, it's not completely irrelevant, but it's basically irrelevant.
Yeah.
I don't even know what this is.
Yeah,
and that's why it's irrelevant. This is irrelevant. This is obviously irrelevant. Moonlight Greatsword, what are you?
My boy Roy loves this weapon. It's not, I'm sorry to do this, Roy, but it's only low tier.
Okay, at least it's not irrelevant though. That's honestly that's a big W for this Moonlight Greatsword.
It's actually not that. Okay,
this is irrelevant.
What? This thing actually had a deceptive amount of range to it. Was not also. I think you forget about this sheet. As soon as you got down to low health, this thing gave you red tier stone ring.
Oh, that's right. That's what it was. It's the rat sword.
Yeah, it's the rat sword. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So this thing is at least like bottom of mid tier. It's actually not the worst.
Yeah. So the one thing to mention about this weapon is that if I remember correctly, in Dark Souls 3, there is no red tier stone ring.
Yeah. there might have been, but I don't think it was as strong
Yeah, so
as Dark Souls 1.
in Demon Souls there was a red tearstone ring called the Clever Rats ring, I believe is what it was called, and a weapon that completed the pair that was called the Marian Blade. In Dark Souls 1, they fused those two effects into one ring, which was just the red tearstone ring, and so the red tearstone ring was like super broken. And then fast forward to Dark Souls 3, and they split them back up.
Yeah.
They split them back up, so now this weapon has its like niche role. You would not usually want to use it as a primary weapon because it just, you know,
Under its activative effect of Red Tearstone Ring, it actually did do more damage than the Lothric Knight Sword.
right. But until that happens, I'm talking about from
Yeah.
like the beginning of a duel
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the end. You would
But
swap to
at the
this
beginning, yes,
usually.
you would
Yeah.
swap this. This is a weapon swap, but yes, this
Yeah.
thing is actually this thing hits like a truck when you get there. But yeah. Also could not be infused, unfortunately. Otherwise, that thing probably would have been like S tier. But yeah,
Tragic.
yeah. This thing's irrelevant. Irrelevant. Murakumo actually like low tier, mid tier, fall from its grace from Dark Souls 1. It's
Yeah.
not the worst, but there's just better. Irrelevant.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. What's this?
Irrelevant. It was like a dagger that was shaped like the Shotel, which is not good.
Oh,
The whips in this game also awful. Irrelevant.
yeah. Unlike Elden Ring, by the way, I don't know if you've played Elden
Yeah.
Ring, but those whips are ridiculous.
All right, Wolf Knight Sword. This far from its Elden Ring counterpart. The fact that this thing had a unique moveset was actually to its detriment.
Ooh.
This thing is low tier. This thing would rather have the actual like move sword. This thing essentially has what is, if you played Elden Ring, the Bloodhound's Fang moveset. But this thing is just strictly worse in every sort of way.
Yeah.
You would just rather have the normal curved greatsword moveset on this thing. It also did not do as much damage as the Bloodhound Fang.
Bloodhound Fang's pretty lit. Unfortunately, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure you can't change the Ash of War on like unique weapons like that.
Nope.
Yeah, Bloodhound Fang would really like to have Bloodhound Step, but
Yeah.
unfortunate. Yeah. Dual
yeah,
caps.
Sorry, my oh man. I'm trying to remember all of the people. I think this is Ice Guy's weapon. This thing, I'm sorry, this thing is actually just not good. This thing is a this thing is a meme.
It can't be completely irrelevant. I mean,
not irrelevant.
did you ever drop a match to him?
If I ever did, no.
Okay, then it's irrelevant.
I mean, it's not the worst weapon.
It's
but
the
like...
worst. It's terrible. No, okay. We could put it in D tier. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, be nice about it.
You catch someone with the L1 and they, sometimes they instantly die, but that's its only saving grace.
That's pretty cool, though. Does happen sometimes.
My baby. Also my baby. So this thing had the unique... As much as I like to call it my baby, it's actually not that great. This thing is like low tier at most. The only thing saving grace about this is this thing got Black Flame Blade as its weapon buff.
Right. And Black Flame Blade, unlike in Elden Ring, was actually useful. Elden Ring's Black Flame Blade is terrible by comparison.
Yes. This thing is just strictly shorter than any curved sword, so we know where that goes.
Yeah.
Straight into irrelevant.
Might still have a place in PvE in Dark Souls 3, but I kind of doubt it. I feel like there are a lot more things that are resistant to bleed in Dark Souls 3 compared to Dark Souls 1, but whatever.
Yep.
Parrying dagger. Yep.
We know where this goes. It goes like irrelevant. However, if you're parrying, sure, but like
it's not
I
terrible.
feel like in Dark Souls 3, the difference between parrying shield and medium shield was so much more closer than it is in like Elden Ring, where in like if I had the chance of having 100% stability and a parrying shield, I'd take the 100% stability.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, you should. Although the thing, so Elden Ring's a weird one because if you've played Elden Ring but haven't played the other Souls games, you're probably more used to medium shields not being able to parry. But for the longest time, most, if not every medium shield had access to a parry, which was like considered to be the standard parry, and then it only got better from there. But the standard parry was perfectly good, and medium shields are they range from like broken to like good enough as far as shields are concerned. So
and the fact that like there was two primary ones, the Lothric Knight Shield, which was the parry shield, and the Black Knight Shield, which was your weapon art shield.
Right.
They both had 100% physical and like stupid stability.
Yeah,
so, like,
and the Black Knight Shield as well had a secondary effect of blocking a lot of fire, and with Pyromancy being potentially relevant, as well as things like did the gargoyle flame spear that had split damage.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, so there's a couple of situations where blocking extra fire damage is actually helpful.
Actually relevant. Yeah. So yeah, it's just why you'd much in Dark Souls 3 you'd much rather have a medium shield than a parrying dagger or like the the stupid buckler. But all
Yeah.
right, I think this is the
Partisan.
partisan.
Yeah.
This is irrelevant. Actually, just the worst spear move set.
Hey, look who decided to show up.
Hey, low tier to mid tier. This thing's actually it's not the bow, by the way. This is the
Yeah, this is the
pickaxe.
pickaxe. I noticed, but that means we're getting close, maybe.
Yeah, the pickaxe actually, you'd be surprised how many of the meme weapons actually became meta relevant once
After the poise
patch hit.
update. Yep, there
Yeah.
you go.
What is this
I
thing?
don't even know.
It's irrelevant.
Straight to irrelevant.
Old. Now this is the new old reliable.
The new
Irithyll curve
old
sword.
reliable. Oh, Irthel. I
Irithyll curve.
remember
Yes, the
this
Irithyll curve
guy.
sword. This is straight into
Mid
top
tier,
tier.
top tier, huh?
Now, yeah,
Really?
this is
Still?
this thing. Yeah.
Oh,
this
he's the
thing is long-
new old reliable. Of course, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this thing has the longest range of all the curved swords, and like all curved swords, it just
Kicking the Karthus
has
curve sword straight down to high tier. Post nerf.
post nerf. While it did do less damage than a lot of it got overshined by the Karthus because the Karthus did a lot more damage
Early on.
early on, but then it had its damage, buff or like nerfed, and then nothing. The Irithyll curve sword was never touched, so it became de facto like the best one because it never had its damage touched, and it was always longer than the Karthus sword. It was just always out damaged. But yeah, so now that they did relatively at the same damage, you just take the extra range.
And there you have it. This
Thing,
is the Life Hunt Scythe, but called something
yeah,
else.
it's something else. It's just irrelevant. It's not that great.
Hand.
Oh, irrelevant.
Lifesteal Fist.
Yeah. This is just you
A casting
take your poison
thing.
with your casting items. This thing's also irrelevant. It's not great.
These are actually not irrelevant.
Well, yeah, but like casting items, I don't quite remember which one is which. To be fair, you just you choose your casting items essentially. If you're using your casting item, you should know which one it
Yeah,
is.
you use the best one. They all have the same moveset, except for actually some very rare
I think
exceptions.
one had a punch. Like, yeah, it's like really weird. But okay, this is a meme weapon. I love this weapon. But it's
Big rock on a stick.
rapier, strictly worse. Just irrelevant.
Yeah, tragic actually. Huge fall from grace.
Fall from its grace. Red Knight halberd or the red handled halberd. This thing used to be top tier. It is now down in low tier because they slowed the R1s of the stupid halberds. But it used to be a roll catching machine.
Yep.
That thing was nuts.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, but yeah, it's still not bad. It's just could be worse. Irrelevant. It's a club. That's all there is to it.
It's a repeating crossbow.
Yeah, this thing was actually kind of annoying. It's not irrelevant. It's like D tier, but it's not relevant.
Basically, if you didn't know how to fight against it, it was bad for you.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember which rapier this is.
Looks kind of like Ricard's, but it's definitely not.
It's definitely not Ricard's. No.
Yeah, there's no.
Are we sure? Are we sure this is not Ricard's?
Is there a Ricard's rapier in Dark Souls 3?
I thought that's where it was from.
No, it's from Dark Souls 1. There's a Ricard's in Dark Souls 1. Sen's Fortress past Ricard himself. There's he drops it, I think. Or there's a chest that has it in it.
Oh, yeah. I just don't remember, and I'm sorry if this is wrong. I think this is just irrelevant.
It's probably irrelevant.
The invasion weapon. The invasion when City came out, these things were incredibly hard to fight. Actually, they even got nerfed. But once you figured out the moveset, they weren't that hard. So I'd say they're not irrelevant. They're like low tier. But these things are better in invasions than they are in duels. So are a lot of weapons though.
Yeah, true.
I forget what they're called in there. It's just their spear instead of the great swords. It's irrelevant. As much as I would love also this weapon to be higher, it's also irrelevant. Irrelevant.
What is this, a casting thing? I don't even...
I think it's the whip of punishments where you whip yourself and hurt yourself.
Oh.
And you get a buff. It's not that good.
This is a weapon that I've seen a lot. Like, quite a bit. This one and this one. I've never seen this one. But these two are pretty common.
They do toxic damage.
Something.
Like, toxin was... The thing is like, boluses were just, like...
So common, yeah.
And you ate them so fast that it they're down to irrelevant. They just don't do enough. They're okay in invasions though. Don't let that put you off in invasions though. A lot of weapons are actually good in invasions. Casting, casting. This thing is
This is the
bad.
Biden. It's terrible. Does no
Yeah, it's the
damage.
Biden. Yeah, casting. This is like the stupid cathedral thing.
Casting dagger. Yeah.
Scimitar.
Worse than the falchion still.
Worse than the falchion. It's irrelevant, honestly.
Exactly.
We already know where it goes. It's worse than
Yeah.
it's smaller than everything.
This is the
These
killage.
things though. My boy Obo Bobo. His new gank. This thing is better in ganks, but they're not irrelevant. With buffs, they will absolutely like almost one shot you. So they're like low tier. They're carried by buffs though, and they're running at one.
It's not the
Bow,
killage, by the way. It's called something else.
Yeah, I forget what it's called. It's called like bandit swords or something. Yeah, irrelevant. Oh, here's the Shotel.
What? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's higher.
I don't. It's supposed to be in D, but I forget what we have in D now.
I don't know what this is.
I don't know. It's irrelevant, but yeah. The dagger,
short sword.
Short sword. Yeah, irrelevant. Smo's hammer, irrelevant as much as I would love to be.
Sniper crossbow is obviously irrelevant.
Crossbow, yeah.
This is irrelevant.
Also irrelevant.
This is a casting thing.
Yeah, it's just a really long stick. Irrelevant.
It's irrelevant.
This thing was relevant. I don't remember if they took away its true combo though. So I'll put it in D tier. I don't remember if its true combo got nerfed though. It used to be kind of good. This thing also just like invasion weapon, but it's not bad. It's the stupid spinny halberd that you do in the air. It's like mid tier. I mean, it has a decent moveset, but it's not the there's better stuff. Whip, irrelevant. This thing actually kind of relevant. This thing had some deceptively long range. This thing was like mid tier.
What is this called?
It's just the giant. I think it's like giant slayer greatsword. Or
Isn't this
like
one? This one has a similar moveset to the Hollow Knight sword, right? Maybe a little longer.
No,
Is that a different one?
Greatsword.
Maybe there is.
Irrelevant.
Maybe there's no other one. Irrelevant.
Yeah, irrelevant. This thing is just strictly worse. This is just Sunbro's sword. Irrelevant. Oh wait, go back. I think that's the spear. This thing had some deceptively long range. Did not do a lot of damage though. Put it like low tier to D tier. I think it's probably better in D tier. But
D tier, you think? All right.
I think D tier. It's not irrelevant, but deceptively wrong.
This guy.
His thing's annoying. It has quick step, but it is a very very small axe.
Yeah, I vaguely remember this. It's mostly annoying. D tier, I guess.
Annoying. It's D tier. Yeah. Fall from Grace from patch 1.0. My old baby.
Rest in peace.
If you don't know, this is the Lothric Twin Sword. It's a great sword that does have the normal greatsword moveset. However, back in patch 1.0, all weapon arts costed a minimum of 1 FP.
Ha!
And that was kind of broken when you considered that this thing had an instant laser beam at the cost of 1 FP. While it did have a general cost for some reason of like 63 FP or something like that. For some reason in Dark Souls 3, as long as you had 1 FP, you could cast it. Which made I think it was called Arcane. You had like an Arcane Cestus offhand, so that
you regen. Oh.
And this thing,
so you just spam it.
Patch 1.0. It made this thing a force to be reckoned with. It was like top tier to like high tier. However, after the patch is nerfed, it's just no longer as good. And it pains me to say this is probably D tier.
So whenever you're sitting there being sad that you can't cast things without the requisite amount of FP in Elden Ring, just look back on what could have been and be happy that other people can't do that to you.
Yeah, you did not like the fact that this thing just had an arena-sized laser that you could instantly put out, and the fact that it used the square-off stance to do it. Therefore, you could never tell which one they were going to do.
Wow.
And you could free aim this laser, so you could roll catch with it. You could try to if people try to roll around you, you'd get them. You just had the square-off stance, so therefore it was hard, you couldn't tell which one they were going to do. All the whips irrelevant.
Yeah, I'm just going through and grabbing whatever else is irrelevant, popping it where it belongs. What the heck is this? Is this the washing pole? Is it Uchi?
Just the Uchi. I think this is just the Uchi. Actually, it might be the the one we have at top is Uchi, and this is the washing.
It looks like a washing pole. This needs to go to mid tier.
Down like low tier.
Low tier.
Low mid tier. It's just there's just strictly better katanas, so it's low tier, I think.
Okay. What the heck is this?
This thing actually kind of nuts. This thing had a million true combos. This thing is actually not irrelevant. This thing is mid tier, like high mid tier. This thing had not only that, but it actually had a block in the middle of its combo strings. So therefore, when you were R1ing, um, you would actually put up your shield for a brief moment
Oh, that's
in between those, and
broken.
it would block. It was very, very good, and you had a lot of movement with this thing. You could roll catch with this thing, despite how short it was being. It was a very, very good weapon. But yeah, and Vort's hammer, not good. These things are strictly worse than the bandit swords. Irrelevant. And my baby, top tier, Warpick.
Beautiful.
Just so good. So
Warpick has
good.
always been better than people thought it was in Dark Souls 1, in Dark Souls 3, but now in Dark Souls 3, it's actually even better than
Yeah,
you
it
know
has actually a
people ever
very
thought it
similar
was.
moveset to if people have seen the Hollow Knight sword, it actually has a very very similar moveset to what that actually looks like in terms of like animations, and therefore it has a lot of similar like forward momentum. So it's actually very deceptively hard to roll away from this thing. You can roll catch very easily with this thing, and it's very good. You just Leo ring hit for like 800, 1200, and it's just
Oh
beautiful.
no, this also looks like the washing pole.
Dude, I'm telling you, they had a hard on for katanas.
There's so many
This thing
katanas.
is just it's just we'll go with the fact that the top tier is probably the washing pole. This thing is low tier.
Okay,
Everything
regardless, it's the washing pole.
it's
Whatever's
the
up here
washing
is the
pole. Yeah.
washing pole. You know what? Can I swap them? Because this really looks like a washing pole, man.
Okay. Okay. I'll allow
Okay.
that.
Uh,
Let's see. This thing's also casting.
yep.
Okay.
This
This
was
thing
really
not
common early
irrelevant.
on.
This was not irrelevant.
This
This
was
thing actually
everywhere.
had a. This thing had a. I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong. This actually had the spear running R1. It had the poke. Right?
Yeah, I know for a fact that one of them did because I was thinking about that when you were talking about one of the other halberds earlier. It might be
Yeah.
this one. I could see
It
it.
might. Yeah. Yeah. This thing also just had a stupid amount of like just damage. And it actually had a pretty decent weapon art that was like a keep off me kind of weapon art. This thing is like bottom or like this is like top of low tier, bottom of mid tier.
I'll put it
So
bottom of
this thing
mid
is
tier just because of prevalence. It's really common.
yeah,
At least it was. I don't know about
yeah. These things actually kind of a meme. Actually, not the worst things. These things are actually decently relevant. You can buff them, and they do a ton of damage. I think their own weapon art buffed them, or actually might not be. These things are bottom of like top of low tier, bottom of mid tier. I think they're top of low tier. You see the other Wing Knight halberd more
Yeah.
than the Wing Knight axes, but
This is the wing spear.
sword spear, wing spear. Okay, this thing's relevant. It's not the gargoyle flame spear. I'm sorry, Artorias fans. This thing is it's not irrelevant, but
Fine.
it's actually pretty it's I say like I'm
Pretty
sorry, but like
decent.
it's pretty decent, but it's just not good enough. This did actually see a lot of relevancy during a brief period, I believe, before Ashes of Ariandel, where this thing was actually it was strictly better than the Claymore. And it actually I think this actually needs to go up higher. This needs to go into the same tier as Claymore, which I believe is mid. Um,
Is Claymore in mid
yeah,
tier? Oh yeah, there it is.
yeah, yeah. This thing was strictly better in some ways than the Claymore, and in some ways it was worse.
Okay.
So yeah, it had a very good running R1. It had the old
Uh,
Claymore, Dark Souls Claymore running R1, if I remember correctly.
I've seen this like literally once.
Yeah, it's relevant. All
I've
right,
seen this
best
more
great
than
axe in the
once.
entire game.
Yeah.
Best great axe in the game. High
High tier.
tier.
All right.
Yeah, this thing was the offhand poke great axe weapon. This thing did a ton of damage. You did a little S-Stock poke or Gargoyle Flame Spear poke into a Yorm Great Axe R1, and that did like 1200 damage.
Yeah. If you played within the first year, you saw this thing everywhere.
Yeah, this thing was good. That weapon combo was very, very good.
Okay, last two. Another
These
rock on a
things are
stick.
relevant. Yeah,
And the
it's just a spear.
Zwei.
The Zweihander. As much as I would love my giant Dan beams to be higher, this thing is low tier at best. It's not irrelevant. It's just not as good as everything else.
Alrighty, so it looks like this, comparing. They place a lot of weapons on average just higher than the other weapons,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of dumb because, you know, honestly, if there is a weapon that is literally another weapon but better, the
There's no reason to
previous
put
weapon.
anything higher.
Yeah, the previous weapon should be in garbage tier because it's comparatively worthless. But regardless,
Dark Souls 3 suffered a lot of that where Elden Ring does have a lot of like, well, you can put the certain Ashes of War on this weapon, or sometimes it has a unique R2 or something
yeah.
like that, or even an R1. But in Dark Souls 3, a lot of the weapon classes were literally the copy and pasted. It was just about whatever was either longer or did more damage.
Or
Um,
occasionally had a better weapon art.
or had
Sometimes
a
it would
better
be
weapon art.
something has a specific weapon art, but the best weapon arts, as already discussed, were like square off, which is the default
Yeah.
weapon art for longswords. So if
Yeah.
something has a different weapon art, that actually makes it worse.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
thing about Square Off too, and is the difference from Elden Ring, is Square Off would like you could activate Square Off like frame one,
Oh
by
yeah,
like setting it off
and
in Dark Souls
immediately
3.
do an attack. Yeah, like you
Yeah.
could.
It,
There was no delay in Elden Ring. You have to like ready your sword and get into the stance, so people know you're about to do it. But it actually
yeah.
just expanded your moveset in Dark Souls 3.
Yeah, it was a very, very easy way to catch rolls. Did a lot of damage. You could counter hit with it if you timed it well. It was just the de facto like if a weapon had standoff, it was good, for the most part. But the thing is in that category of like straight swords and long swords, there's only one that's long enough than everything else and does a decent amount of damage, which is the Lothric straight sword. So therefore, everything under the Lothric straight sword, other than the Dark Sword is like irrelevant. You needed to have some effect like the Astoria or the Astera Great or Longsword, which was you regen health when you had it equipped, which you wouldn't use it as like your opening thing, but you might swap to it when you were getting kind of low, or if you needed to regen and stuff like that. But yeah, you just strictly had to be longer or do more damage, or just have an insane amount of moveset, like the Hollow Knight Greatsword, like just the greatest Greatsword moveset. Um, but yeah,
All
that's
right. So sorry to cut you off there.
yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna close out. So if you have anything else to say, go ahead.
Uh, look how they massacred my boy, the War Pig, in Elden Ring. It doesn't even do piercing damage. It does flat like hammer damage. It does blunt damage now.
Wow,
Why did they do that?
really a
Miyazaki,
tragedy.
why? Why? Also, just like, can we just go back to like Dark Souls 2 PvP? Is for back? Can backsteps be relevant
You
again?
know, to be honest, Dark Souls 2. I was actually I heard someone say the other day that Dark Souls 2 had the best PvP of any Souls game, and
Oh yeah.
in retrospect, maybe right. Like
People,
it
okay.
wasn't that bad.
People hate on Dark Souls 2, but Dark Souls 2 did something right, and that was it made almost every weapon unique in some way, and it made it so that like a lot of the move sets had like were like relevant.
It was
Uh
the
when
only.
was the
It
when
was
was the last time we were able to parry two-handed with a greatsword?
yeah, yeah. That was kind of cool actually. It's also the only Souls game yet where
Mm-hmm.
backstabs have been relevant and not overpowered. The
Yep.
only
And
time ever.
yeah. And it also backsteps were also relevant and pretty decent.
Yep.
Not even pretty decent, very good actually. Backstepping was very good.
Well, that's enough shilling for Dark Souls 2. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, that's going to conclude the Dark Souls 3 PvP weapons tier list. If you guys have anything else that you want to see, let me know. Yeah, I've already gotten a request for a shields tier list. I don't know when I'm going to make that, but I'll get around to it eventually. It's pretty much really straightforward and quick. So
Let me tell you, there's only going to be 3 shields
yeah,
in this
there
tier.
are 3 shields.
Adjudicator shield simply because of the health regen, the Lothric Knight shield, and the Black
Black
Knight
Knight
shield.
Shield.
There you
Yeah,
go.
there you
There
go.
you
There's
go.
your shields tier list. All right. Um, thank you again, Siri, for coming online and helping me with this tier list because I wouldn't have been able to do it without you.
Yep.
If you want to go check out his channel, he has a bunch of clips from various games and whatnot. He does a lot more variety than I do. But yeah, feel free to go check him out. Say hello, do whatever. Um, I'll have his channel linked in the description. And otherwise, have a nice day and thanks for watching.